My brother fucked my wife and now he wants me to help him. My brother's presence has turned my life into a nightmare, and now he's come to me, asking for my help. He's cut off ties with our parents and wants to leave 2 million of inheritance to me. My brother David has always harbored deep resentment towards me, not out of jealousy but because of the favoritism I received. Our mother always coddled David, did everything for him, even making me do his homework, while I never got the same consideration. I accepted it all because I was independent, maybe partly my fault for always fulfilling his needs without expecting anything in return. When I needed help, he never reached out, only coming to me when he wanted something. David was a loud, rude kid, while I was a quiet, introverted student who liked to stick to myself. I felt that our mother might have developed a negative view of me because of my straightforwardness, which made David the family favorite. I didn't mind this favoritism, but problems began when he started bullying and mocking me. He would make fun of my height and glasses, secretly read my diary, and then tell mom about it. My parents would just laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. David even did worse things, like almost breaking my glasses, putting dirt in my food, and even tiny stones in my cereal. Fortunately, I noticed these before Mom did, as they hadn't damaged my teeth yet. Mom always said it was just brotherly teasing. Every time we fought, David would exploit my insecurities to insult me. He knew I was being bullied at school, and instead of supporting me, he sided with the bullies, calling me ugly loser or furry monkey, encouraging them to hurt me. During one argument, he even told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, this one really hurt, especially since my mental health was struggling at the time. Hearing my brother wish for my death was deeply painful. Dad was often at work and Mom seemed indifferent, even blaming me for upsetting David, as if it were all my fault. High school made things worse when David tried to set my hair on fire. Unbelievably, Mom defended him, saying he was just playing rough. Thankfully, Dad eventually sided with me, pointing out the severity of the situation and even threatening to call the police on David. This moment was eye-opening for my brother since he had never faced consequences for his actions before. Dad made it clear that enough was enough, and David needed to start respecting his older brother. Dad came to talk to me, and I never expected him to support me since he always told David how similar they were. Dad admitted he'd been waiting for David to mature, but he began to realize David had turned into a bully. Hearing this from Dad was incredibly reassuring, nearly making me cry. I told Dad about everything David had done to me over the years, including the bullying at school. Dad was shocked by what I had endured, and the next day, he spoke with the principal to ensure that the bullies were warned that any further bullying would have serious consequences. Dad also signed me up for MMA classes, telling me I needed to face life's bullying bravely. Although I, like a bookworm, tried to learn fighting, I focused on balancing my studies and training. The MMA classes transformed my physique. One day, David started up again. He stole the money I had worked hard for. When I confronted him and demanded the money back, he said all I could do was go to Dad. I don't know what happened, but I hit him in the face, leaving him stunned and falling backward. I took the money from his pocket and then threw him back. David started crying hysterically, and Mom ran out to help him. When she learned I had fought David, she was shocked and blamed me, saying I should be a good example for him. She also complained to Dad about my behavior, and Dad sternly demanded explanations from us. I told him how David had stolen my hard-earned money, and David tried to justify himself, saying he needed the money for a date. Dad told David he was lucky I only hit him and not called the police. Dad also warned David that he had no right to take other people's things. David threw a tantrum, screaming about how much he hated me, then ran to his room and locked himself in. After the incident, David began to distance himself from me. He finally realized he couldn't bully me anymore. Even though Dad no longer supported his behavior, I felt we were equals. However, David's behavior deteriorated with age, becoming more angry and volatile each year. He remained distant, even communicating through Mom when our parents were away, instead of talking to me directly. Whenever I asked Mom why David couldn't talk to me directly, she would always avoid the question. As time went on, dealing with David's comments became increasingly difficult, and I longed to move out and away from him. I repeatedly asked Mom to mediate and have us sit down and talk, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. Eventually, I earned a scholarship as a top student and went to my dream university. Dad threw a party for me, and Mom seemed proud as well. However, David remained indifferent, barely acknowledging my achievements. On the day I left for college, I was excited for the future and to escape the toxic family environment. In the first few months of college, I felt free, made new friends, enjoyed my courses, and began building a life independent of my family. In my sophomore year, I met my wife Karen at a fraternity party through a friend, and we hit it off immediately. Although my religious background made out-of-wedlock pregnancies frowned upon, when we found out Karen was pregnant, we decided to marry after graduation. Our wedding was small but joyful, and our parents were happy for us. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, and even though other women showed interest, I never pursued them because I was content with my marriage. However, I later discovered two instances of infidelity in our marriage. One with a married co-worker of Karen's, which lasted for years, and another brief affair with an ex-boyfriend when visiting her family. Although I chose to forgive her, the betrayal left me heartbroken. I worked hard to rebuild trust, and although the relationship seemed to improve over the past 4 years, it was still strained. 3 months ago, Karen told me she had a long-term affair and hinted that our son might not be mine. This revelation shocked and hurt me deeply. I struggled to understand her confession, but her cold response left me with more questions. Eventually, she admitted the child was David's. She explained that when I introduced her to my family, she became friends with David. David showed her affection while I remained distant toward him. Karen explained her relationship with David and their romantic escapades. She chose to be with me because I was the more reliable brother, but she knew she made a mistake. I decided to get a divorce, despite Karen's attempts to reconcile. I chose to be strong, telling her I couldn't continue the marriage. Ultimately, I revealed to my parents what had happened with Karen and David. Their shock was evident. Mom initially tried to defend David, but Dad firmly supported me and decided to cut ties with David, leaving all the assets to me and giving David only $1. David tried to make amends, even begging for forgiveness at my doorstep, but our parents refused him. David didn't send me an apology, and it was clear he didn't regret his actions, only that he was upset about being cut off by our parents. Dad planned to leave all the assets to me, ensuring David had no further claims. Although I felt anger toward David, I was also a bit saddened because I had never heard him cry so helplessly. After dealing with all this, my relationship with my parents improved, and Dad became more of a friend to me. Mom and I found understanding and support through this chaos. Dad helped me find a good lawyer for the divorce and confirmed that David was the child's father. I decided to cut off contact with Henry because I didn't want to see Karen anymore. Although it might sound harsh, it was the space I needed. Finally, I discovered that Mom had told David about Dad's change of will. David's reaction shocked me, and I questioned Mom, who said David didn't deserve the money and believed I deserved it more. Although the inheritance couldn't undo the past damage, I chose to move forward. I've learned a lot from this experience and am more determined in my life goals.